So I studied at King's for my undergrad and then UCL for my PhD and Imperial for my master's. And I posted it on TikTok the other day and someone said that they have a medicine offer at all 3 universities. Which one would I recommend? And that made me think, which one would I recommend? I always get asked this question: Imperial, UCL, King's, which London university should I go to? So in today's video, I'm going to be comparing them, my experience, my opinion, of course, the 3 universities. As someone who is a Londoner myself, I wanted that live out experience. So I lived in Borough, not far from the university. And then for Imperial and for UCL, I did go back home. So I was living in East London. So this is my experience as someone who is from London themselves, understands London, knows what London's about, but also has tried all 3 of the universities. Before we continue, I wanted to share with you ThesisAI, which is a tool that I definitely did not have during university. It's the world's first AI assistant that can draft a whole scientific document with just 1 prompt. So all you have to do is upload all the research papers that you are interested in and that you want your scientific document to be based on, and then you write 1 prompt. So you give some detail about what it is that you want to write and you get a full scientific document that's also editable. I'll leave the link for it down below with a discount code. Happy writing. So let's start with location. So of course, they're all based in central London. And let's start with UCL. So UCL is based in Bloomsbury. The kind of main campus is in the centre of London, but it's also a quieter part of London. So it's still very central. You can walk to Oxford Street in about 10-15 minutes. It's away from kind of the main centre of London, the main like downtown area of London. It's very well connected. You have a lot of different transport links, which is really useful if you're someone who's commuting quite a lot or if you're someone who needs to move around quite easily. It's very well connected, and it's also within an academic part of London. So you have a few other universities nearby. So SOAS is very, very close. SOAS is right next door as well. The British Library is literally 5 minutes walk as well. So it's in a great academic area of London, but it's still very central and downtown. Moving on to King's. King's is also part of kind of zone 1 of London. It's sort of more south. So you have Waterloo with a campus, you have London Bridge that has the STEM sciencey campus. So it's a little bit further down. So again, it's a bit of a quieter part of London, not too touristy, not too busy, but you do have things like Borough Market very close by, which does get very busy. They're both very well connected in terms of transport. So you have Waterloo Station and you have London Bridge Station. You have the lines that go outside of London. So it's a very busy station, very well connected. The area itself is relatively quiet, so it's not too bad. Then thirdly, you have Imperial, and Imperial is more west based and its main campus is in South Kensington, which is in a beautiful part of London. Absolutely stunning. I'm so sad that I was only there for a year. Such a beautiful part of London. Very touristy though. You're next to all the museums, you know, the Science Museum, the Natural History Museum, the V&A, and you can also walk to Hyde Park. Like, it's absolutely stunning. The Royal Albert Hall is very close by as well. To live next to there and to shop and to do your daily life, it would be quite pricey, very expensive, and there's like no way around it because of the location. I did find that it was a little bit busy, I'll be honest, like just walking every day from the station to the university, you're walking past like hundreds of students. They're so cute, but sometimes you just want to get into the lab, and having to wait for all of them to tap in and tap out before you can tap out does get a little bit annoying, but it is in a very beautiful part of London. I really enjoyed being there. Imperial isn't as well connected in terms of tube lines. You have got South Kensington Station, but sometimes when it wasn't working on the weekends, the lines were closed. I had to go to like the next station or get a bus or something. So it's not the best connected in terms of transport links. The other 2 are a lot. All right, let's move on to the important part. So the second thing is the quality of teaching. So of course, all 3 universities are very high-ranking universities. Imperial kind of fights with Oxford and Cambridge for like the top spot for many years. So they're all very good universities. King's and UCL are also kind of top 20. I think King's was 22 in the world, I believe, when I last checked. But in the UK and in London, they're kind of top 10. So all 3 are very research-led universities and interdisciplinary. So you'll find that there's a very large community of researchers on the university who are working there upstairs who you don't actually know. When I was doing my undergrad and masters, I didn't know that there was a whole world of like PhDs and postdocs that were like walking around. I just assumed that everyone around me was students, but actually there's a massive number of researchers who are within universities that are creating and that are doing research creating these research papers and finding these new information out, which will then help with the teaching and also helps to bring the rank of the university up because of how much of its research outputs. I would say that UCL and King's have a more traditional approach to teaching, very, very heavily lecture-based. If the lecturer wasn't there, you'd miss your lecture. Things might have changed, obviously post-COVID. A lot of the time it's very heavily lecture-based and you have to be okay with kind of sitting in lectures and looking at slides and just taking notes. Imperial has a little bit more of a hands-on approach. So I find that with Imperial, you have a lot more workshops. Again, I think it complements and it's quite similar to the Oxford and Cambridge style of small groups, small tutorials, small workshops, where the professor or the lecturer knows you and the tutor knows you quite well. Whereas in universities like King's or UCL, you are one of 300 in a lecture theatre and you never really get to know your professor or your lecturer. Whereas Imperial, I find that there was a lot more sort of hands-on workshops where I was going to labs and I was speaking to the lecturers directly, and we were in these small workshops in small groups in these rooms discussing certain things, which does feel more intimidating, but I think it's better for you in the long run. I found the quality of teaching at Imperial to be the best. It is the best. Compared to UCL and King's, I really found the teaching at Imperial to be world class. And then I think second place, I'd probably put UCL. I didn't have that many lectures in UCL because of course I was a PhD student there, so I didn't really experience the lecture side of UCL, but I did think that when I went to a few talks and a few other things like that, it did feel a little more structured. Whereas with King's, I just felt like I was one of many. So I did biochemistry at King's and I was one of like 300 or 400 students, and I just was one of that many students in this massive lecture theatre. The professor in front, slides that I didn't really understand, not really well done, really messy, lots of information. I don't know, I just felt like it didn't feel like I was being taught something that I could go away with immediately. I had to do a lot of independent learning. Another thing that I found with all the universities in London in general is that they don't really teach things like academic writing. They don't really teach you how to do referencing. They don't really teach you how to think critically. Again, this is a criticism of mine as now someone who has their own company that teaches students how to do this and that has a YouTube channel and has done this for like 8 years now. A lot of students till this day are not taught how to do these really basic things. And I think that's just a UK university problem because we're given these lectures, like I said, one of 300. At what point are we going to learn how to write an essay? It's not personalized like that. A lot of that learning has to come from you and it has to be quite independent. So I learned how to write properly when I was in Imperial because there was someone in my lab who was really good at writing and she taught me how to do it, and from that day on I just knew how to do it. But if it wasn't for that support, she was a PhD student at the time, if I didn't get that support I would not have known how to do it. So it's not something you're taught explicitly, and I really hope that that's changed. But I do find that you do have to be quite independent when it comes to learning how to do the academic writing side of things when you're at universities like King's, for example. Number 3, let's move on to campus life and the social life, which I'm sure you guys are all excited to hear about. So one thing about King's is that it's kind of spread out across London a little bit based on the disciplines. So like if you're doing biochemistry, if you're doing medicine, if you're doing dentistry, you're on the London Bridge campus, right? And everyone there is in the sciences. If you're doing something more literature, more social science based, you might be on the Strand campus. If you're doing law, whatever, there's like different campuses. So I find that you don't really mix with other disciplines, which I didn't really like because all of my friends ended up being in the sciences. And unless I was more proactive and I went to societies and other events, I would never have seen another student from Strand, or I would never have seen another student from a different campus because I just wouldn't go there for any of my lectures. Whereas, for example, with UCL, all the students, or even Imperial to be fair, all the students are kind of in this one area. So you do mix quite a lot. You have engineering and you also have science and you also have English and you also have all the subjects are kind of in one area. But at King's, it's not really their fault. It's just because the campuses are in different places. You do end up being in your bubble of STEM, etc., etc. And I do definitely feel like there's a big segregation in who you can socialize with and who you meet because of that at King's. Having said that, Imperial I found to be very academic. I think I made one friend at Imperial. We were both Londoners, so that probably explains why. But I literally didn't speak to anybody at Imperial. Everyone was so academic. Look, I loved it. I think it was such a good thing, and I think that I'd rather people were academic than they weren't academic, and it does explain why Imperial does very well grade-wise. But I found that there were a lot of international students at Imperial, and you can't blame them. They're paying 30, 40K to be there minimum on their fees, and forget like their accommodation and other things. So they are very studious. You do struggle to meet people and just go and have a bit of fun at Imperial. I barely met anybody, and I'm very, very social. Whereas at UCL and at King's, there's a lot more going on. There's chitter-chatter in the corridors, and there's people in groups, and there's people chatting. You definitely feel like people have a social life. You see people wearing their sportswear or their whatever because they want to go. They're going horse riding afterwards, and you see a little bit more of that balance out and about, which you don't necessarily see at Imperial. In my opinion. Let me know what you think. In terms of the reputation, all three have an amazing reputation across the world. If you got a degree and you graduate from any of the three universities, you'll be one of the top, percent in the world of, university graduates, and you'll be able to get a job from anywhere. But having said that, for the student that asked me which university should I go to, I wouldn't choose, and this is something specific that you want. For example, I think Imperial does 6-year medicine degrees. So if you don't want 6 and you'd rather go for 5, that's a very specific reason. But if you are just looking at 3 universities that have 3 very similar degrees, I would just choose the one that gives you better accessibility in terms of like location, in terms of how much you have to travel if you're living at home, which one's the easiest for you to get to, which is the cheapest for you to live around, because it's the everyday small things that will make a big difference. If you're having to travel 2 hours to get to university, in the dark depths of winter, you're going to absolutely hate it. So these are the small things that make a big difference. And now being on the other side and looking at where people have ended up in life and what universities they went to, it doesn't really matter. The deciding factor is what you do, what your experience is, how active you are, how much you network, how much you get yourself out there, not what university you go to. And then the last one I want to speak about is prestige and sort of networking. So which one is good for that? Now, all 3 of them I think are amazing for networking. Imperial, I think you would have a better chance at networking because you have lots of like international students and lots of students that come from all over the world and the UK here because they're high achieving and they want to get a degree and go on to have an amazing career. So you're more likely to find somebody who maybe has a parent in that field or like comes from a network already just because of the university itself. But in general, the networks are all there. It's for you to find them. All 3 universities have networking events. All 3 universities have things going on that you can attend. Even if you don't know about it, there's things happening. There's always like conferences, there's always events, there's always career discussions happening. And even if there isn't, you can always approach anybody and speak to somebody about what they're doing, what they want to do, what their parents have done. And people are, I think, quite open and quite willing to speak to you about it. So I think to conclude, between Imperial, King's and UCL, I don't have a personal favourite, but I would say Imperial if you're looking for the academic side of things, if you're looking to just have a very rigorous structure and you want to make sure that you're going to come out of the university with a good education and a good degree, Imperial's the one. If you want a little bit more fun, a little bit more cultural diversity, to be in a place that you feel like you could have a bit more of a balance, I would say King's or UCL would be the one. But if you want a little bit more structure, a bit of a better location and to be around students as a whole, I would say UCL is the one because of the location and because of the way that you're neighbouring other universities and because of the campus and just the way that it is. I think UCL has always been my favourite. It just feels like you're in the university city within London. So yeah, UCL, Imperial, King's is probably my order. But no matter what you do, no matter which university you go to, it's not about the name, it's about the experience and what you make out of it. I hope this video is helpful, and let me know if you have any other questions about the 3 universities, or if you want me to compare any other universities. I've been to Roehampton as well, so I'm happy to compare that to other ones too. I'll see you in my next one.